everybody. I'm here again talking about Men's Health Week, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here today with Major Finlay Anderson. So before we introduce you, Major Finlay, I wanted to ask you, how are you today out of 10?
Today, I'm feeling good. I'm a 9 out of 10 today.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I spend a lot of my time helping brands grow through building effective communications. But brands, when we think about them, they're not a tangible thing. They just exist in people's heads as a set of thoughts, feelings, and associations. Now, you're famous for different reasons. You're famous because you're the company commander of the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Regiment of Scotland. But you're also famous because you won Gladiators this year. So congratulations on that, and thank you for all you're doing. I know you're out on operation at the moment. I really appreciate you making the time to talk. So I was thinking about, Finlay or Major Finlay as a brand and what you might be famous for. And I think probably for most people, they'll think about, physical fitness and strength and agility. So I know you're out in the desert at the moment, you've built yourself a gym. So that's obviously something that's really important to you. Why is physical fitness so important for you?
Sure. So I think, firstly, from a professional perspective, as a military leader, commander, we always say that we want to lead from the front, and that is what most leaders will aspire to do, especially in combat roles such as the infantry. If you expect people to do arduous things for you and to do challenging things for you, then you need to show that you can do it too, and that you can lead for the front. So I think, first of all, I just professionally, I just feel that need and obligation to do it, and duty to be fit. And second is just I just love it. It's what makes me happy. It's what I'll spend my spare time doing. So it's probably harder to stop me doing it than start me.
Yeah, so it's about leadership, but it's also something you enjoy, something that you thrive on. And I believe it's something you've always enjoyed. But for some people, it can be quite hard getting started. So I wondered if you have any tips for beginners looking to build that fitness.
Sure. So I think if you are a beginner, then and you're not someone who moves frequently or takes part in sort of fitness activities regularly, my opinion is that you just haven't found the right one for you yet. Everyone likes different sports, different activities, different levels of intensity, and whatever it may be, just try new things, try them all. There's all sorts of things online for free that you can check out first before committing to anything in person. But just move, just find something, keep trying all the different activities on offer, and you'll find your thing.
Yeah, I love that, because I think finding something you enjoy, so it's not a chore, it's not something you've got to make yourself do. That's
Exactly.
when it be really, yeah. So for me, that'd be dancing,
Yeah,
or just being out walking
great.
the dog.
Exactly. Perfect. And that's movement, and that's two kinds, and you're building endurance and everything from that. So why not?
Yeah. So I know all-round fitness was obviously key to your success at Gladiators, that strength that you've got. But I'm sure, like with any sport, that mental fitness is also really important. So sports psychologists nowadays play a key role in elite athletes and helping them succeed, helping them cope with those challenges, that emotional regulation, when things aren't quite going right. If you're playing a tennis match and you're not winning, how do you keep yourself on that game? How do you retain that focus? So that ability to function under pressure and self-reflect. I imagine you don't have your own sports psychologist helping you. So I wondered, how do you develop that mental fitness?
Yeah, so no, I don't have my own sports psychologist, but what I do have is a range of military experience, and that's really what I drew on and what has given me what I feel is my mental strength. And and it's that time spent in difficult environments, deployed in operations for months on end, and in difficult conditions. It's challenging courses and promotional sort of promotional and selection courses like pre-parachute selection, known as P Company. All these things where you've pushed your body hard and pushed your mind hard to achieve something. There's a sort of, I think, often misconception that breaks you down in some way. What it does is it increases that gauge of what you can take and what mentally it was within your range, and you realize it. And for me, that's what really helped is knowing what my mental stretch is and actually knowing that I've got more. And so I think it's my experience up to this point that really gave me the mental strength for the show.
Yes, it's a bit like building muscles, isn't it?
Yeah, the mind is a muscle, and yeah, exactly. I think if there's any misconception that I often see, and I'm going to try and not be too controversial here, but I think we often forget that mental resilience isn't built by protecting us and bubble wrapping ourselves. And clearly, it needs to be done in a controlled and safe way. But mental resilience is built by challenging ourselves, and so it just like a muscle, it only grows if you if you challenge it, if you put stress on it, if you lift something, if you move. So similarly, the mind, if you just protect yourself, it's not going to become more resilient. But if you challenge yourself, actually, you build that resilience, and that's what I've noticed anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, a bit like if you want to strengthen a particular area of your body, the same is true with your mind, isn't it? So it's knowing yourself and what you need to focus on to build those different areas of mental resilience. I mean, how important do you think physical strength versus mental strength were in helping you triumph and win gladiators?
Mhm. Uh, I think this is a trick question. No, I say that because I think you can't have one without the other. I think health is not one thing or the other. Health should be viewed holistically, in this way that mental fatigue will affect your physical performance, and and vice versa. Mind over matter is great to a degree, but it also has its limits, and you need to be physically fit too. So I think for me, it was a combination of both. And one thing I did always say in Gladiators is, I did training with all the other contenders, and we all knew each other and get on really well. And between us, I pretty much know I wasn't the favorite, and I wasn't the best really at any of the particular games. But lots of people got injured, and actually, it was my general physical and mental robustness, rather than being particularly great at anything, that actually is what got me the win, which I've realized
Yes.
on reflection.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's all of those strengths, isn't it? As you say, it's all those things together that give you that strength to succeed. So I know the MOD has an absolutely brilliant app called Head Fit for Life. One of the things I love about it is open source, so it's not just for people in the military. It's for anybody and everybody. So I wondered, what do you think of the app?
Yeah, great. I mean, for something that's free that gives you loads of handy hints and tips, why would you not check it out?
So there's a lot that I love about it from what I've seen of it. So the intro videos I think are really brilliant. So you can see from those how they outline, the psychological principles on which the app is based. That gives you real confidence, I think, that it's founded on things that are going to work. I think it's thrusted, as you were saying earlier on, positive ways of thinking. So how can you have that really positive mindset to lead to really great outcomes? So I'm just looking at my notes so I get the areas right. So we've got 4 key areas: de-stressing, building that drive. So, how do you commit to something and make sure you're going to achieve it and not give up? So building that determination, confidence, and mood. So, what I love about it is that, as we were saying with your body, there might be particular things that you want to focus on. And I think it makes it really navigable way to do that. Why would you recommend people to try it, and where would you suggest they start?
So I think in terms of where to start, it might be just a reflection of your own needs at the time, and whether you do feel perhaps a little bit of a lack of motivation, or you're feeling a bit stressed, then I think there's clearly marked ways in which you can go
Yeah.
down the right path and take a look. And in fact, I would go back and say, just drawing your point of the sort of evidence-based and research and principles behind the app. I think one thing I've noticed in particular in social media is there's no shortage of people giving advice. Lots of people seem to love to give advice at the moment, from some very well founded and some very well academically grounded, but some not so much. So
Yes.
I think it's reassuring to know that this is checked and as strong foundations. I think the other thing I'd say on choosing where to start is perhaps you're not feeling the need for it right now, but I think just have a look, have a scan, flick through things. Some things you may really like, some things you think, no, that's not for me, and that's fine. But if you've got those library of resources, why would you not check it out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, life's a roller coaster and we never know what's around the corner, do we? So I think building that mental resilience and those skills means you're equipped when you might hit a bump in the road. It covers visualization in there, which is something that I really like. Imagining yourself being something different. When I was young, a lady in our local co-op told me I was a Viking, I think because of my hair. But in circumstances where I need to be particularly mentally resilient, then that's what I imagine I am. I'm a Viking, and I tap into that as a way to give me strength.
Interesting. I like that analogy, and I can't say I have tried I can't say I have tried visualization in that way, but the funny thing about being in the military and wearing a uniform and wearing patches or badges or ranks is that you do have that other persona as well.
Yes.
And that was something that was always in the back of my mind when I was on Gladiators and when I was being interviewed post show or during
Yeah.
it or in the events, which is, I'm a military leader first and foremost. And I think before I sort of did things, it was always, what would make my company, my team, my regiment, the army proud, and how can I come across well? And so actually it's a slightly different perspective of the visualization, but actually that helped me just sort of keep me, not let it get the better of me.
That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
So I think there might be a misconception, even with the MOD, that the app is only for people who are in the field, operating out in the field, like yourself and your team. But why do you think anyone should try it?
So I would say it's not anyone, but everyone would be my first point, because it doesn't matter how great your mental health is at any given point. I guarantee there will be someone around you, whether it's close friends or family, who are not feeling as great as you. And if you've got just these other ideas and small hints and tips that are in your personal toolbox that you can suggest to others or that you can help others with, then that's what good friends are meant for. So I think you owe it to your friends and to your family to educate yourself on these things, because you never know who it could help in the future, and often you will never know if it has or not, and whether it has stopped someone from slipping into a worse state. But let's be a good friend and let's try.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, you're touching there on something really important, which is, life isn't simple. We all hit adversity at different points in life. And I'm sure, in your role and in your lived experience, your professional experience, you've encountered some really challenging things. I wondered, if you're willing to share, if you're comfortable to share what some of those things, those tough moments have been for you, and how you've got through them.
Yeah, so I will share one. So sadly, about 4 or 5 years ago, one of the soldiers that was in my company took his own life. And immediately when those things happen, as anyone with a relationship to a person who takes their own life, whether you be a wife or husband, a colleague, a best friend, or even just a sort of more distant friend, the first thing you do is think, what could I have done, or what how has that happened without me expecting it? And adversity for me, I mean, it's nowhere near the adversity, of course, his family, his girlfriend, and other people felt. But
Yeah.
professionally, for me, I kind of think, well, have I failed in my duty of care here as a leader? Have I not done everything I can do? So that was particularly tough for me and for all his other colleagues. So I
Imagine.
think that um, that adversity is tough. I mean, I think in that instance, the one sort of thing that uh, kept us going is that it was genuinely a complete surprise, and so we kind of, we didn't feel like we knew about it, and we didn't feel like we could have done something. Um, and that's kind of kept everyone okay, I'd say, to a degree. But the flip side is, if we'd known some of the tools and things like you learn on simple like mental health first aider courses, or through things like this app, are there little things we could have done and could have helped with, and could that help someone in the future? So I think that, that's for me why these things are really important, and important that we all have a knowledge and understanding of it, so we know how to help people in whatever guise we come across them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about that. It must be really tough for everyone involved.
Mm.
Um, one of your responsibilities, one of the many responsibilities you have in your role, is looking after the welfare of around 80 to 90 soldiers, I believe.
Mhm.
So, what do you do to actively support their health and well-being?
Um, so lots of things, and I'd say as commanders, leaders, managers, that looking after your people is just absolutely the first and foremost things you need to do. It's the grounding for absolutely everything. If your people are not well looked after, healthy, if they're not trusting and confident in their training and capabilities, then they won't perform. And so, people think of, like, an old way of military thinking would have been mission first. We do what it is, whatever the cost. But
Mm.
actually, looking after your people is looking after the mission. And I definitely firmly believe that. And so, yeah, what do we do? Everything from occupational health, and literally discussing with doctors, physiotherapists, medical professionals on how we can help improve people if they are injured or ill in any way, all the way through to welfare-based activities and team building activities, or fitness, or working out together. Absolutely everything that we do is to build that team and cohesion, so that we can perform together.
And I think, that applies to the business world. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. And if people feel looked after and empowered in their job role, it doesn't matter what environment you're in, they'll have that sense of purpose. They'll have that sense of teamwork and camaraderie, and actually, all of that then contributes to their mental health, but also to the performance of the company, the business,
yeah.
whatever it may be. I believe that.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. I think, you create an environment in which people can thrive, they feel valued, and so you get the best
Yeah,
from your team.
yeah, and
Um,
yeah, sorry. I was just so I'm actually shortly leaving the military, or leaving the military full time, and I've started looking into other employment, and going down interviews, and looking at companies. And one of the first metrics I've been looking for when I'm looking on LinkedIn or a similar site is you can actually see the staff turnover rate, and you can see how quickly the sort of mean or average time that someone stays in a
mhm.
company. And I feel like that's a really strong indicator of how well they look after their people. If people feel like they want to stay, or if they, feel like they want to move on quickly, I think that's probably one of the best indicators.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. And good for you looking into those things. There's got to be a two-way fit, hasn't it?
Mm,
You know,
absolutely.
yes, businesses will look to you to have the right skills and everything to be able to meet their needs, but it's got to fit for you, otherwise it's not going to work.
Mhm.
So we've touched on this a little bit already, which is that, you know, especially when it comes to men's health, because men tend to not be so open, a lot of the problems can be hidden,
Mhm.
and aren't openly talked about. And I think that's connected to a lot of stereotypes, specifically around men. What do you do to encourage the men you look after to go beyond that, you know, to encourage people to be more open and honest about how they're feeling,
Mhm.
rather than suppressing that and hiding those feelings?
Yeah, I mean, first thing I'd say is that stereotype was certainly built on something, and certainly was true in the past. But I can honestly say I've been in the military 14, 15 years, and in the last 10 or so, I can hand on heart say that I've seen a definite shift in that, and that
Yes.
ability for men to talk, which is really reassuring. So I've definitely seen that change, and it's not that it necessarily needs encouragement, but it just needs to be a culture where that is okay. Uh, and uh, and I think we're getting there. It's not perfect, and it's quite a difficult balance to strike in our environment, because a lot of our training is, of course, about being physically robust and physical endurance, and really challenging yourself and pushing yourself.
Yes.
So then it feels really counterintuitive to then like openly admit a weakness, and so it I think it's just a difficult uh, it's just a difficult circumstance to make it fully open to talk. But I can definitely say it's getting better.
That's brilliant. And I think there is it's we I see it happening in culture, and in the other conversations I've had, people have talked about that. There's a lot of organisations in the UK now called by and for organisations, so organisations created by men for men.
Mhm.
So I think men are also, you know, helping themselves to have that conversation together.
Mhm.
So, you know, fabulous organisations like Andy's Man Club, and
Yeah,
their motto is, you know, you don't need to man up, just speak up. It's okay to talk.
yeah.
Um, it, what do you do to give people that permission?
We literally say it, and people will just say open door policy and then sort of brush over it. But we do make a real point of saying you really can just come and talk, and I have done it. There's lots of one thing that I've noticed, and I'm very happy to do, is sort of we've got quite a hierarchical organization. There's lots of
Yeah.
ranks, lots of layers to it. And from the most junior private soldier in my company to me as the commander, the major, there's, I don't know, there's eight or nine ranks in between.
Hmm.
And so, in theory, people would go to their next person up. And this is no sort of slight on them, but I think when people feel that close to you, it's almost harder because they're like your direct line manager. Whereas actually, I found a lot of them feel more comfortable talking to me because I almost feel a bit further removed and not someone who's managed them day to day. So it's kind of a very separate environment. And I think having those channels open, and so the ability for people not in my company to come and speak to me. And similarly, I shouldn't take offense if my guys or my men and women in my company want to go speak to someone else if they feel more comfortable. So I think that's really important. Don't take these things personally, but just let people have the channel that they feel is most appropriate.
Yeah.
And of course we have our own structures too. Everyone from welfare teams that are in units to other commanders. We've got sort of padre pastoral care, and then of course medical staff as well. So there's everyone in between, and so I think it's just creating that environment where people know they can at least go speak to someone, whoever they feel is right for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's feeling you can have a consequence-free conversation.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also think it's how leaders come across as well, in terms of that approachability. Um, because if they don't think you're going to be open-minded to that conversation, then it just won't happen. So how you come across as a leader, I think, also makes a massive difference.
Yeah, and I think something that's quite helpful in our organization, this is not to say some people are better at it than others in any way, but we have structures where, there'll be people within a company that are more like more focused on the discipline and very direct in their approach and make things happen in quite a direct manner. And actually having people who are different sort of genres of leaders actually quite helpful, because then, okay, that I don't feel like there's an in to talk to that guy, but actually this one over here that's more of a coach and mentor, then I can talk to them. So I think actually having a range of different types of people is good too, different traits.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really great point. So I'd imagine, friendships and camaraderie are particularly important in your work. Especially when people are away from home for extended periods. So, that sense of togetherness is even more important. How do you create an environment where people can support each other?
Yeah, so the funny thing with this is I can honestly say it creates itself. It's funny. I don't mean to sound like an absolute poster boy here, and the Army's belonging campaign, but it's you, the bond you get and form in the services in general, it is different because you're not only working with someone, you're also living with them, you're potentially in the same room as them for months on end. You're also doing your whatever your downtime activity is with them, you're playing with them, you're doing fitness with them, whatever it may be. So you almost can't not form bonds, and it'll be with people that you wouldn't perhaps have met in life if you hadn't joined the services. But it's funny about that sort of shared hardship and shared experience that then just bonds people. So yeah, I can honestly say it creates itself.
Yeah, lifelong connections, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, thinking about leadership, because that's key. You are a leader. I'm thinking about, as you were saying earlier, leaving now and moving on. What do you think business leaders should be doing to support men and their physical and mental well-being in the workplace and society more widely?
Sure. So I think I feel quite passionately that leaders and managers in general should value quality of output over quantity of work time, and I think that would be the single biggest and simplest change that would help people. We've discussed, and we know already, my passion for physical fitness and an activity. But to give an example, if I had a standard 8-hour working day in any business, any company, but I spent 90 minutes out of that day over my lunch break. So let's say I went 90 minutes. That included sort of change gym time, change back, grab something for lunch, and then get back to the office. So in theory, that's 6.5 hours of work, not 8. Um, versus the person who skipped that and worked 8 hours straight and had lunch at their desk. I I would argue, and I don't mean to sound arrogant when I say this, but I'll probably be more productive than that person, and I think most people would be.
Yes.
Nobody's concentration span lasts that long, and nobody is creating value for hours and hours on end just because they're sat at a desk or sat in their place of work. So I think if you value people's ability to do something that energizes them, makes them feel great, to take breaks when they need to, but they still get the job done, then be flexible, just be accepting of it. I think that would be my biggest advice probably as a leader.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. I work a lot in helping clients develop advertising, and so you also need space to reflect and be creative, and that often comes from downtime. So you might not, as you say, actually be sitting behind a desk, but you can be more creative and productive in environments that are away from your desk, because you open your mind to thinking differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thinking about advertising, then touching more on my role, I would love to know what you think about the way men and boys are portrayed in advertising today.
Can you elaborate a bit more on that? Because yeah, what do you mean by the question?
Um,
Or how do you think they're portrayed? Or I can't think of an example that.
so I don't know how much advertising you see. You'll obviously see it on some of your social media feeds.
Yeah.
But if we think about advertising, it's like any media. It
Mhm.
shapes how we think and feel about ourselves. It shapes our expectations of ourselves and what possibilities are. It shapes how we think other people will interact with us. So our expectations of other people. Um, so it plays a really major role in influencing society. And so I believe that how we portray people in ads is a responsibility. And we
Mhm.
see really strong evidence and data that shows that when you get it right, when you portray people positively, the outcomes are more effective. Um, so I wondered in terms of, how you're currently seeing men and boys being portrayed. Do you think that's constructive to positive outcomes?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think it's really hard to think about this.
It's fine, take your time.
I think you'll get it, I mean, advertising is a huge world. Marketing is a huge world, and though I've never directly been a part of it, you can see a whole spectrum of how men, boys, or anyone are portrayed from, by the nature of being advertising. People want to advertise their product in looking like in the best environment on the best person, so that you can affiliate and think, well, if I had that thing, then I could be like that, and I could be better and something to aspire
Mm,
to. So I get that psychology, but also get the other end of people using advertising in a very relatable and trying to make things almost humorous, and complete opposite end. So it's you see it all, and I don't think I know enough to say what I think works best. I think it, yeah, I'm not I'm not answering this one very well.
yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's good what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any sort of changes I'd like to see in it. I think people just need to be um, aware of the fact it's not real, and to make their own assessments, to look widely, to look at other items, look at other other advertisements, and not take everything on face value. Is the one thing I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of scope for smashing those stereotypes and portraying real people. So you
Mhm.
talked about, aspiration, but a lot of brands actually make more meaningful connections with people when they show real people. So there's a real
Mhm.
authenticity about it.
Yeah,
And there's not one way to be, if we think specifically about men and boys, there's not one way to be successful or happy. There's a myriad of ways. And I think it's really
yeah,
important to have that richness of opportunities and aspiration for people. So you've no longer got this one stereotype of what it is to be
yeah,
a, a,
yeah,
a happy man.
absolutely. And I think that it is almost like another part of equality, diversity, inclusion is just diversity of expression. So you don't have to be part of any given protected characteristic. And I think just from seeing sort of younger cousins, or younger family members, I think a difference I see from myself at school is it was kind of like there was an element of I don't know, element of cool, or something
Mm-hmm.
associated with being in the top rugby or football team, and that was it. But I see a genuine difference now in that, like, everyone's doing so many different things and so many different activities, and it doesn't seem like that exists in the same way. There's not like an old jock culture,
Yes,
and actually, there's a real positive change I see is, if someone's doing a thing they like and they're doing well at it, great, that's their thing. And so I very much live and let live, and I feel like that acceptance has definitely improved over the years.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, So, if we think about engaging with men, and brands can play a key role in influencing that and shaping that. Um, what are your thoughts on what brands should do to engage men more effectively when it comes to thinking about their health?
I think yeah, two parts to this. I'd say first of all, the responsibility doesn't start with brands. It starts much earlier. It starts with education, and I think this is improving generally in schools now, as part of sort of physical education classes
Mm.
and general education on everything from nutrition to different types of training to activity. And I think that is a really positive change. So I think it starts with at least an awareness from a young age. Um, uh, I think first of all, and I don't think that's necessarily brands or commercial responsibility. I think that's education. But later on, and when you are exposed to brands, engaging effectively is just it's viewing health as something that you are in control of. You see so much in the news about, particularly in UK, about NHS and NHS failings, and not to get too preachy on this one,
Mm.
but there's probably a lot of issues which are NHS level issues are there because people haven't taken their own preventative health-based measures and been as healthy as they could have been and been, as health responsible as they could have been. So I think it's what can brands do is build the idea that health is something that is proactive. It is something that you can take control of. I think that's what I'd like to see the most of.
Brilliant. It goes back to what we were saying earlier as well, doesn't it, in terms of, you know, a mental and physical fitness and looking at your whole self.
Mhm.
So empowering people to do that.
Yeah.
And I do think, this Head Fit for Life app is a great way for people to think about the mental aspect of that.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I'd from experience with mental health, I mean, I'm not a mental health professional, but my general understanding would be that and the most important fact is that it's not binary. It is a spectrum, and anyone at any given time can be anywhere on that spectrum, from complete ecstasy and elated on the green end through to absolutely the worst possible depression on the red. But chances are you sit somewhere anywhere on that spectrum, and it will vary throughout the day, throughout weeks, throughout time. And if you can influence that in any way, then you should, and other people's as well. And whilst absolutely, if someone's right down that red end, then as someone who's not medically professional, you refer them, and that's absolutely for them to deal with. But
Yes.
there's a big part of that spectrum of mental health where we can affect it, where people who aren't professionals in the field can positively affect each other, and that's where I think we need to really build on that education of mental health, and like with this app, that's just another tool to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really like how you say, this isn't just about you, it's also about equipping yourself to help the people you love
Yeah,
and care about.
actually, yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Finlay, for making the time to talk to me today. I'm sure it's been a very busy day. I really appreciate all of the insight you shared, and for being so open and honest with everyone today. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me, and yeah, it was really interesting discussion. Thanks.
Thank you.